Our first question is, how did GitLab's open core strategy and pricing model evolve over time? How was it started versus what it looks like today? Who were your first customers? How did you find them? How did you sell to them?
Yeah, that's a lot, and that's years of things. I'm not sure that all of that is something our company should be inspired by or repeat or something like that. So I'm a bit hesitant to answer this because uh, like you get knowledge from history. I'm not sure it's relevant to the companies. If people are interested, I gave a talk at HeavyBit. I linked it in the chat about all the models that we tried and failed. I think that talk summarized quickly is the way to be a VC funded company is to have software IP. So you do need a proprietary version of your software and sell that. Other than that, our pricing evolved. In the beginning, we really underpriced, which is a very common thing for new founders. And the other thing is, as these OCV companies start, they start with no proprietary features. So it's logical that over time, as they make more features, their pricing increases, or typically you do that by introducing new pricing tiers. And what did we sell to them? That's in someone will link that for us, but that's in buyer-based open core pricing model. Ask money for features that directors and up want, and make the features that individual contributors want open source.
Jeff, you have the next question.
Yep, thanks, Betty. Sid, pleasure to meet you. My name is Jeff Fernandez, CEO of Kedify. And I apologize, it's a little bit similar to Betty's question. However, I was very curious about how you simultaneously grew a deep relationship with the open source project from which GitLab came, while you also emphasized GitLab's differentiation. At the same time, how did that evolve? I'm sure, right, in the early days that changed to Series B, Series C, and then when you took the company public. But I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, at the beginning, when we just created the company, people thought, oh, now the open source project is going to evolve slower because GitLab's, the company, will also make these proprietary features. And to address that, actually, we, in the beginning, licensed our close, kind of our proprietary version under an open source license. So it wasn't really proprietary. I don't recommend that. I think it was very confusing to everyone. What's important is that the open source part of the code base kind of expands more rapidly than before the company. And it's easy to do. Like, all the people at your company are net new. Like, as long as one person of them sometimes add something to the open source code base, the open source code base should be better off. So, well, maybe not all of them are net new. Maybe some of them you hire from the existing community. But I think the important thing is make sure that the open source part of the code base grows noticeably faster than it did before the company. Feel free to ask follow-up questions. Otherwise, Andrew.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Jeff, I think one of the places that you're coming from is that with GitLab, said you guys maintained the GitLab repo, and so I know you've been pretty outspoken about one distribution, two licenses, where you have your proprietary feature set in a subfolder. That's not the case with Kedify, for example, where Keta is maintained by CNCF, and Kedify is trying to drive, like, how do we use it? I think there's a little bit of a struggle there. It's like, how do they create enough delta on top of the open source project to drive kind of a choice for their proprietary distribution or build versus Keta's?
Yeah, that makes it significantly harder. I think there's a few things you can do. I think one thing is to make sure that it's easy to get started with your paid version. So if I go to the Catify website, I don't see the code. Maybe it's here. Where's the code?
It's a good question. If you go back to the website, you can go to pricing. You can get started the free tier, click get started, and then need an account at the bottom, sign up. You can create your account. This, of course, should not be log in. It should be create your account and you get right in and build an account.
Okay, so there's no code unless I sign up. So I think for all of our companies, we recommend that all the code is source available so that anybody can
Okay.
contribute to even the proprietary parts. I don't think there's a great reason. You can make things up, maybe competitors copying you. I've not seen that in practice. It's okay, it's proprietary, but put it out there. And I would put it out there with like, you can run this, it's just limited to X or Y. In your proprietary part of your code base, you can put in artificial limits, no more than 3 servers or whatever is relevant to your business. I think that will make it much easier for people to just give it a spin and hopefully not like GitLab was mostly a bottoms down sales at a certain point, but the bottoms up really help and they augment one another.
Right. So you would just make it available entirely, not even a reg wall. Fascinating. Okay. I'll talk to Zbigniew about it. Thanks, Sid.
Yeah, and Rich, maybe this is something we should be a little bit clear to all our companies, especially the ones that have kind of double repos, that all the code should be source available, including the proprietary part. We recommend that the proprietary part, it's easy for people to get started because it's such a hump to kind of install something new. You don't want to hit someone with that and a paywall at the same time.
That's my key takeaway, Sid. Just to keep going down here, because I think it's yielding some fruit. Jeff, you also had a tension between what's the free version of Catify, where there's a belief that these are going to be large enterprises, high ACV, requiring a fair degree of hand-holding and implementation. And so I think there's a temptation, like our free version is the open source version, but we don't
Yeah.
maintain the open source. So I can anticipate what Sid's response to that's going to be, but you should frame the question in a way that you get some feedback here.
Zbigniew and I had a good chat about this, and so I think we are going to continue to make the free version of Catify available, but the intent and the goal will not be to convert those to paying customers. Instead, we'll use it as a point of validity for engineers to use it, make sure it's credible and the like. At the same time, we will not promote it as directly. We'll downplay it, but for a developer who's looking for it, it is certainly available on our new pricing page. It will be there. So that was the choice and I appreciate your feedback, Rich, as we navigated it.
Yeah, I think there can be a big difference between your open source version and your free version. In your open source code base, you should not build in any artificial limits. Like imagining having an open source code base and it's like, we limit to 3 nodes. Someone would should just send a PR to remove that limit. So that doesn't make sense. In your free offering, it can build on the proprietary offering and it can have artificial limits. It can have also, even if something is open source, that doesn't mean you have to pay for hosting them. Like you can have limits on if you offer it as a SaaS, it's reasonable to have limits in that. And I think it's disheartening to hear that it never led to any customers directly. I do think it's even for people who are considering paying, I think just giving them the option to view what it's at and have a toy installation would help. Even you don't even have to put it behind a registration wall.
Thanks a lot.
I think the registration walls are more appropriate if you do like paid marketing and you want to see the effectiveness. Well, if people kind of find it themselves on GitHub, like you probably don't want to put that speed bump in the way. So I think it's like, how do people come to the product?
Installation has not historically been, I don't want to say easy, but it's relatively time consumptive, requires experts from our Kedify team who also happen to be Keda maintainers. And there are a lot of edge cases that we find as we set up proofs of concept. So that is becoming the primary way that we are getting folks going, is by getting proofs of concept set up where we do a meaningful amount, I don't want to say hand holding, but support with a dozen or 2 dozen deep questions that get asked over a 2 to 8 week period as they prove it out. And so part of the challenge I think that we're facing is that installation that you're describing that would theoretically be relatively smooth and easy for a developer isn't quite as streamlined as that.
Yeah. And it seems that you're I'm not sure that's the case for your company, but a lot of open source companies get stuck here. They see that companies kind of need help installing their stuff, that the support is a way they get new business. And what they do is they start focusing on that. Like we sell support. And that's a big, big trap. You should automate yourself out of a job. Every time you run into something, you need to hold someone's hand, improve the code, improve the docs, make it so that it's no longer needed. And there's a temptation to not do that because they won't need us anymore. But that's what's unlocked the growth of GitLab, that the installation become much, much simpler.
So that's what we're trying to do. With every new installation, we identify those edge cases, right? We're learning and we'll eventually create, like, I don't want to say a wizard, right? But it'll get easier and easier to do it yourself. Final question, if I may, is one thing that we've encountered as well is when we are selling to a customer, potential customer that already uses Keda, we must uninstall Keda and then reinstall Kedify. And typically we don't get very much pushback on it. It's a more secure build, et cetera, et cetera. But wanted to get your read and take on that.
Yeah, it's not ideal. We rather see something else. I think with the Keda being in the Linux Foundation, that's a tough thing. There's maybe a software solution we can install on top, but maybe that's just not possible. And but what you can also consider is like right now people go to Keda for if they just need the open source functionality. You're the expert. You can probably make the open source version better than Keda, so that you go to Kedify in both cases. You need the HTTP auto scaling, you pay you guys. If you don't need that, still the quality of life of just the Kedify installation.
This is what Zvinik and I were chatting about today. Absolutely. I think that's the direction.
So make sure your super simple, no registration wall, it's just out there as a, what is it? As a Kubernetes Helm install is better and more user-friendly than Keda itself, and become the repository of choice.
Thanks so much, Sid.
Thank you. Andrew.
Sure, nice to meet you. So I'm Andrew. I'm the creator and maintainer of Raid, which is an Apache 2.0 open source coding agent. And the company that we're creating is around browser use, which is an MIT-based web agents product. So I'm in a little bit of a different situation where I'm not the core maintainer of the upstream project. And essentially, the core question is, and we're in the first weeks of our company, and we're developing proprietary upsells, and we're essentially a software as a service around browser use. And the core question is essentially how much resources should we allocate to upstreaming to browser use, or how much would be enough to establish a good rapport in the browser use open source community?
I don't know. It depends on your community and how you're being perceived. My hunch is that not a lot of people care about you at this time or feel threatened by you. So you don't have a lot of ground to make up, and you could just do the stuff that comes up organically. Like you run into stuff that really needs to be fixed upstream and you submit that, and that's it. And you don't go out of your way to do anything else. But it's different for every company because sometimes there might be a lot more scrutiny and concern.
That makes sense. Thank you.
By the way, I hope they care about you in the future. It's just live it.
Yeah, I do too. My intent is for Gobi to become a significant upstream contributor over time, but as you know, it takes a little while to establish a reputation in a brand new project.
Yeah, makes sense. And don't worry too much about the reputation. Worry about creating value for your users. And I'm super excited about the browser use stuff. Lars.
Hey everyone. I'm Lars and I'm the maintainer of Locust, not the original creator, but the maintainer. And we're facing some interest from Microsoft, and they are basically building what I would class as a similar product to what we're building. We don't have a premium version except for the cloud solution, so it's all SaaS.
Yeah, so you don't have a proprietary part of your code base.
No. Well, we do have one, but it's all server side, so it's not part of the repo.
But it's kind of not, there's no user facing functionality there. It's not in
No.
the.
There's a small client, which is actually open source, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, there's your solution. You should have part of the repo be proprietary code that contains functionality that's aimed at managers and up.
But even like that would sort of change our business model a little bit, like selling a premium product that's not based on the SaaS solution, or
I think if you don't have any IP as a software company, you're going to be in for a bad day. You need proprietary IP to monetize. That's what make VC-funded companies work. If you keep all the code open source, then not only will Microsoft compete with you, worse, there's going to be, if you get popular and looks like you're on your way, other people will start offering the same thing. We'll offer it as a SaaS solution too.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that Locust itself is kind of good for a SaaS solution. It doesn't like it's hard to compete with basically the engineering power of Microsoft and potentially others.
I think AGPL is kind of it's open source in nature, but it comes with so many very tedious requirements that it's like the open source license you choose when you want to be open source in name but not in practice.
Gotcha.
I think open source has great benefits for distribution, and you lose that to a great degree with such a license. But you should, like we recommend, become an open core company. This place is called Open Core Ventures, not Open Source Ventures. Please become an open core venture and have some of that. I have some of that proprietary functionality with stuff that creates value for the users. I hope that you have people using your software and that you have demands like make it faster, make sure my dashboard doesn't glitch, make it do XYZ, all the kind of the IC requirements. But hopefully you're also starting to get these requests like, hey, I want to have role-based access control, or I want a log of what we did, or I want to set maximums for the number of requests we can put out, or things like that have more of the manager plus feel to it. Are you getting any of those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For the SaaS solution, we're getting those, but not.
But for the SaaS solution, why not put that in the repo? Why not have that be work in the self-hosted solution as well?
Yeah. The open source project doesn't like have a centralized component in that fashion.
Build it.
Okay. Yeah.
Or just source available your existing SaaS thing so that it works for self-hosted too.
Okay.
I wouldn't build something new just for self-hosted. Really try to keep your SaaS version and your self-hosted version as similar code base as you can.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are building everything on top of Kubernetes. for that particular reason, to just
th
be able to do it somewhere else. So
I think
you could open source that, yeah.
I think one thing, not open source. I didn't say open source, open
No,
core, please,
open core.
proprietary, source
Yeah.
available. I think one mistake you've probably made is you put your SaaS code in a separate repo to keep it technically clean.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put everything in the same repo. These technically clean separations have led to greatly diminished monetization.
Gotcha.
All the companies that did it kind of failed. So don't do it.
Gotcha.
Integrate the two repos. Make it super clear what part is proprietary, which subdirectories, and have it be available both for your SaaS people and for the self-hosted people. And considering what Locust does, I think some of your self-managed customers are going to be a big part of your revenue. For GitLab, it's still the majority of revenue is self-hosted.
Cool.
Cool. Fletcher?
Yeah, we have a separate folder of enterprise license code within our very fully fledged free open source side. We've got a growing number of competitors, kind of small and large, who are taking Authentic, the MIT license portion, sort of white labeling it, not attributing, no transparency, no source available.
I think, first of all, if you don't get the recognition, just claim it. Make a page on your website that says based on Authentic and list all these products. Then look at what they're selling. That's probably an indicator of demand. Look at which ones are successful, what are they selling, and try to build that. Like, don't hide this. Like, make yourself seem bigger. For Lars, I would embrace Microsoft's adoption of this. This is an amazing thing for you. Do ask them for joint webinars where you, the Locust expert, talk about Locust on Azure. Don't be afraid. Embrace it. I don't think, considering where you are as a company, this is just a really positive event.
Absolutely.
I think for companies that are further along, think of the Elastics and the Redis, and did not build the proprietary part of their code base, they have problems. So keep it MIT, put the Manager Plus features in the proprietary part, and embrace this adoption and shout it from the rooftops.
Hey, Sid. Matt Joseph, CEO of Sterling PDF. So I have a question specifically about the buyer-based open core model. And I think you've written about this, but I wanted to elaborate on it a little bit, that there's a trade-off that comes up between growth and monetization when you have a feature that could either be a manager feature or an individual feature. And so the example that's come up for us recently is with sharing and access controls within our SaaS product specifically. So basically, we want to give people freedom to be able to share because we think that will drive growth. But we also know that managers care about that feature. We chose to focus more on growth, but I'm curious how you think about navigating those kinds of decisions when you have that tension.
Yeah, I agree that sharing is kind of a viral thing, so you don't want to hurt that. So keep that free. But after sharing comes the headaches, and management is like, can we limit public sharing? Like you have to be logged in to see it. Can we get an overview of what documents are shared with whom? Can we prevent people from sharing documents outside of our organization? So you need the organization email address. Those three things, those are all great proprietary features.
That makes a lot of sense. And so your recommendation would be to keep it open primarily, keep everything open, but make them pay to have limitations on it. So the sharing is wide open by default. If you want to limit it, now you have to pay, basically.
I think sharing is something ICs care about a lot and is vital for your product. So I don't think you want to limit that. I think you want to limit all the stuff that Managers Plus start worrying about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Or limit, you don't limit it, you just monetize it. You got to make a living too. Simon.
Thanks, Sid. I had some questions about building the founding team and what kind of makeup you prefer and how how your founding team looked and how it played out for you.
Yeah, first 5 hires, all engineers, people I knew, plus people who were contributing to the project.
Senior, junior, I mean, did you have a preference for?
Self-starters,
Yeah.
people who weren't afraid to jump on whatever was needed. Greg?
Hi, Sid. I'm Greg Siratek, CEO of OpenCore EMR. How do you think about OpenCore in markets where the customer isn't a developer? In our case, it's small healthcare clinics buying EHRs. From speaking with the OpenEMR community, we've learned that these primary users care most about functionality and price, not extensibility or developer access. In your view, does OpenCore still offer strategic advantages in a market like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. A little bit less, like you'll get less free R&D. I think you'll still get some. Like, I think there was a nurse who contributed a lot to OpenEMR and things like that. So these systems are so core to people's health, like the most important thing to most people on the planet. I travel around with a CD-ROM drive because it's the only way to get radiology pictures out of a hospital. Like, I don't know, I'd pay someone to make a better Epic integration and be able to download data. So it's not always your users. In your case, it could also be your patients that might contribute out of anger. And then, okay, maybe the R&D side is subdued. The go-to-market side, hopefully, is still in full effect. That open source, open core projects make it very, very easy to get started with them. The code is right there. You can download it, and you're off to the races. And that's such an amazing advantage. And it's still the case for OpenEMR. And lots of small clinics are using it, and I think that's hopefully a great way to get into the market.
There is no free tier today, like managed service available.
I think it makes sense for all of our portfolio companies to offer a SaaS version, and I think typically the SaaS version will have all the open source features for free, but probably with some usage limits. I think that just intuitively that makes sense as an offering. And I think you should look at vendors who've done an amazing job of embracing their partners. What comes to mind is Odoo, O-D-O-O. It's an ERP software thing. And I think for a long time, you could find like, here are our vendors here and there. And I think it's being run really well. That might be an inspiration.
Okay, thanks, Sid.
Thanks, Richard.
Hi, Sid. Richard, the CTO and maintainer of Phaser. I appreciate this is a bit of a crystal ball sort of question, but with the evolution of AI and basically the way in which people are now literally prompting the software that they need, how do you kind of see this changing the open core model and indeed open source in the future when it's the shift towards people basically asking for the software that they want instead of going out and actively searching for it and then potentially finding our projects as a result?
I think there's still going to be a ton of curation in the short term. Actually, like a lot of open source projects that kind of make AI better are open source. They're kernelized, not the least of them. So I think it's creating a new market. And I'm reading from the vibe coding guidelines that someone shared. This is not a GitLab thing. Code that gets run when a developer does something, go wild with vibe coding. Code that gets run when a user does something, we need to understand every single line. Core business logic, we need to write every single line. So, like, I think right now, and there was an interview with the GitHub CEO that I read today too, that there's still a really big place for humans right now. But okay, go all the way. In the future, all software projects are run by AI agents that hire AI agents to do all the coding and all the curation. How are they going to release their software? I think they'll release it open source initially, and we'll build open core companies around them. So I don't see open source going away. AI agents also need to legally use software, and it's going to keep being a great distribution mechanism and a great collective R&D mechanism.
Okay, thank you. So you basically see it as being beneficial all around, really, as long as we adapt to it rather than just ignore it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Griffin.
Good morning, Sid. I'm Griffin, CEO of Grapes. Do you ever regret making something open source that you later wish had been proprietary, or vice versa? And then, I guess, how do you avoid the risk of cannibalizing your proprietary product by having too generous of an open source?
That's a great question. The thing that comes to mind is like LDAP integration. I think that's a typical proprietary feature. It was already open source before I started GitLab, the company. What we did at GitLab is when we were in doubt, is this an IC or Manager Plus feature? We made it proprietary. I think what I underestimated is how much inertia there is. If you then later want to open source it, because we learned more, it's more of an IC feature. There's a big reluctance to make a change. So in hindsight, instead of giving the guidance like, be cautious, it's a one-way door, so opt for proprietary and then open source it, I either would have said, and we're going to open source this many features a month, or I would have said, okay, don't be cautious, just make your best estimate.
Got it. Okay.
Ian.
Hey, Sid, CTO of Rumble Labs. I kind of wanted to circle back to some of what you were talking about earlier. We're in the position where we're not the core maintainers on the project that we're building the company around. You had mentioned that it's ideal for the proprietary code to exist in the same code base as, I mean, there are a bunch of questions in this space, but one of them is whether the proprietary code sits in the same code base. So I'm kind of curious how you would advise navigating that circumstance where maybe it's not always possible for that sort of alignment to exist.
Yep, makes sense. I think ideally, you're in control of the repository. You're not. Hopefully, you're contributing to the open source code base and they see your company is a positive influence. One thing that hasn't been shown before, but I'd be curious about, at some point you ask like, hey, this repo, it's all the open source stuff. Do you mind if we put our code in here too? Because sometimes we have changes that affect both the open source and the proprietary part. Here are 5 examples. Be more efficient to just have it in one repo. We'll clearly delineate this, like no one's going to get confused. Is it okay? We as a company put it in our eggs in your basket. I think that could work. So you don't necessarily need control of the repo. You just need someone's okay to have a subdirectory in there. I think if you're a frequent contributor and you show that it's now costing you extra effort, that people might be open to that.
Interesting. Yeah. Out of curiosity, have you seen that actually applied before, or would this kind of be an experiment?
No one's even suggested it to me.
Okay.
I made it up after I saw your question.
Great. Thank you.
But I think I suppose at some point they kick you out, then you start your own thing again. So there's kind of not a lot lost. So yeah. I think it might work. And what we typically see is as the companies become bigger, you end up hiring more of the core maintainers, and the attitude of the community is like, oh, this is a really positive thing for the project. So it's okay to have the company take charge of the repo. They've been so responsible. But that's a few years out maybe for you.